All right, Chaz. Whoops. All right, Scott.
You should keep
That's
that. That's good.
that's never happened. Scott,
Yeah.
realwatersports.com is doing their used gear sale right now, which is one of my favorite times of year.
I know that, how many times do we love like those surf swaps? I mean, used gear, I've got so much used gear, by the way. Used gear is a great way to to get some new resources for your surfing, right? At a where you don't feel quite as captured by it, like you can get it for a little, obviously a little bit better value. And so used gear sale, a great time to pick up some stuff that you might have been on the fence about, perhaps.
I probably went, I don't know, 10 years of riding used surfboards before I got my own first custom. And especially with a resource like this, they do a fantastic job documenting what the blem on the board is. I mean, some of it is just a blem, like a manufacturing blemish, and they identify exactly where that is, take close-up photos of it. So it's not like you're just buying a beater surfboard. You can buy it practically new with inconsequential blemish, just get a major discount on it. So that's the move.
Realwatersports.com. Check out their used gear sale. They've got some cool stuff. Like, you know what I like to
Yes.
say? Pre-owned. You know what I mean? It's not used. It's just lightly pre-owned.
And certified pre-owned, certified by Real Water Sports. Go to and it's on their main page, like homepage on a slider. You can just see it, click over from there and see surfboards, foil gear, everything, not just surfboards. And then also surfnvs.com. By the way, they never do a used gear sale because their Apex fins are guaranteed for life, if you can believe that or not. So I've had some for probably 8 years now. They're still brand new looking. They don't have a nick on them. They're kind of indestructible.
Yeah, I mean, shoot. Listeners know that you and I, David and Scott, we love our NVS fins. And I've got my wife actually moved them from a drawer. It's now a box that's easily accessible with all my NVS fins, and they've got such a wide array to choose from. So many great options, and I'm just a big fan of Leif and Jamin. They're such good guys. They're such good gentlemen, and the customer service through the roof and fins next level.
Totally. Customer service. And then also they stand behind the product. That guarantee for life means they stand behind the product. So quality product, customer service, and competitive pricing. I don't know what else you want. Go to surfnvs.com.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing.
Yeah, guy. Yeah, guy. Yeah, friggin' guy. David, we've said it again. We've said, yeah, guy. And it's Wednesday, January 29th of 2025. The month of January, David, more or less behind us. This is Spit. We talk all things surf. And we've got quite a show for you today. I've got a Who Said That? I've got a bit of history that I was hoping to discuss and some other things. I'm sure you have some interesting topics as well.
Good morning, Scott Bass. We also have the opening window of the Pipe Pro. The kickoff of the 2025 WSL season is underway. And then some big money into the surf industry news in regards of big brands that are entering the surf space yet again, sponsor dollars rolling this way, and coincidentally, perfectly timed, Stab Magazine's latest How Surfers Get Paid episode, which I think dovetails beautifully with that story. So, Scott, where do you want to start?
Well, let me say that I spoke with Zeke actually last night. Zeke was telling me about the new How Surfers Get Paid drop. I didn't see anything. I usually get an email. Maybe it came in and it had a different subject line or something. But yeah, so that I haven't seen that yet. Imagine you have. I'd love to watch that before we talk about it, if you don't mind. But whatever. I don't want to dictate everything. Why don't we start? Because I have a pretty Pipeline Pro adjacent. Um, who said that? And then a little bit of history about the Pipeline Pro behind it. So
Yeah,
if you're okay with that, we can start there.
we can always lead off with pipeline.
Okay.
Any show, it is appropriate to lead with pipe.
Yes. Well, who said that, David? And I quote, there were 5 minutes left in the Pipe Masters repecharge heat. You know, the heat before the finals. And I'm not kidding. Everyone circled him, just circled him and looked at him. And it was just, no way, mate. Who said that, David? Was it A, Hans Hedemann, B, Buzzy Kerbox, C, Joey Baran, or D, Alan Byrne?
Well, really difficult. Who are they circling? Number one was my first thought. And then who's the one doing the circling? And I could see some of those guys being circled, but I have a hard time picking.
Everyone circled him. Everyone
No,
in
I
the
know.
heat circled him.
I get that. I'm just saying the names that you mentioned, like I could see them circling Joey Baran, trying to prevent him from getting a wave much more than I could see him doing the circling.
Right.
You said Hans Hedemann, A. I forget who B was.
Okay, B was Buzzy Kerbox.
Buzzy Kerbox.
C
Huh.
was Joey Baran, and D, Alan Byrne. Who said that?
This is a really tough one. I'm gonna go Hans Hedemann.
Wrong, David. It was Joey Baran. Joey Baran who said that they just circled this guy. Let me give you some backstory.
Okay.
Backstory to the quote. Larry Blair is the guy that they circled. Two-time Pipeline Masters winner, Larry Blair. And if you don't mind, David, I'm going to go on a bit of a read here from Matt Warshaw's Encyclopedia of Surfing. And I've already edited this but it's 3 or 4 paragraphs. If you'll bear with me, everybody.
Hey, don't need to pad it. Just go. I want to hear it.
Okay. Backstory to the quote. Larry Blair won the 1978 Coke contest in Sydney, which earned him an invite to the Pipeline Masters later that year. That's how it worked back then. Getting into the Masters was half ratings points, half made up background voodoo by contest promoters. And this was Larry Blair's first Pipe Masters. Pipeline was 8 feet and perfect in the early rounds, and then windy and gnarlier in the later heats. Lopez, Rory Russell represented the old guard in the 6-man final, along with up-and-comers Hans Hedemann, Dane Kealoha, and Joey Baran. Blair snuck through the first few heats and joined the others in the final and played a tactically perfect game to take out the event. First Aussie to ever win the Pipeline Masters and the youngest Aussie to win it. Still the youngest. In fact, Blair was barely 20 years old when he won the 1978 Pipeline Masters. Larry Blair returned the next year, 1979, even stronger. Booked himself into another stacked final. Sean Thompson, Dane Kealoha, Mark Richards, Tom Carroll, Larry Bertleman. That's a heavy heat. And again, took first prize back to back, emphatically getting blown out of a sparkling double overhead tube, arms raised in the air with less than 3 minutes left to overtake Dane Kealoha. Surfing Magazine at that point named Blair the new king of Pipeline. Then Larry Blair shot himself in the foot. He did an interview right after the contest and claimed he was aiming for 5 Pipe Masters wins. Fallout was still raining down on the North Shore from the whole aggro Aussie busting down the door episode. And now here was Blair, the tone-deaf dummy, stating in no uncertain terms that he was ready to outdo Lopez and Russell and every other Pipeline ace. 5 wins right there in print. The following year, Larry Blair shows up in Hawaii a few weeks early to get ready for the 1980 Pipeline Masters. Takes lots of waves, more than his share. Somehow doesn't get punched out. But in the Masters repecharge heat, the heat right before the finals, the other competitors have a tacit understanding that Larry Blair's run is over. Future Pipe Masters winner Joey Baran was in the heat. And this is where the quote comes in. There were 5 minutes left, and I'm not kidding. Everyone circled him. We just circled him We looked at him and we just said, you know what? No way, mate. And that was it. Stopped cold. Larry Blair returned to Hawaii the next year and the years after, but never even got close. Years later, Larry Blair said as much. After that second win, it became difficult for me in Hawaii, with people being aggressive in the water, verbally aggressive, and eventually I decided to quit competing. One last indignity, David. The Pipeline Masters trophy that Blair posed with in 78 and 79 wasn't his to keep. It was a perpetual trophy, meaning they took it away after the post competition photo shoot, stuck it in a box, and handed it over for an hour or so to the next year's winner. Around 2005, Larry Blair got in touch with the Triple Crown organizers to see if he could get a memento of some kind for his 2 wins. Request denied. It's a 2-for-1 indignity, actually. Blair first asking for the trophy, second, the Triple Crown turning him down. But credit where credit's due, the Coogee kid on the right day with a lot of pressure and cameras pointed his way and a bit of money on the line outsurfed everybody at Pipeline. And he did it twice. End quote from Matt Warshaw's Encyclopedia of Surfing. A great piece of history as we lead into the Pipeline Pro.
Well, so much of history is lost to history, right? And when I interviewed Matt, maybe in November or December, he was saying that history is one-sided because it's written by it's written by whoever it's written by is going to have a certain perspective on it and that sort of thing. And so he wasn't ashamed at the role that he has, but he was just acknowledging that it's only one version of things. And so that one person can only tell so many stories. And so it's interesting, and this is obviously one of his, but it's interesting how many interesting surf stories there are that are just completely lost to history.
Well, we're gonna do our best, and I know there's some other podcasts out there. I think Tyler Brower or how do I forget?
Brewer.
Brewer. He does, I think, a history podcast on surfing, and I'm a big fan of history just in general. And you're so right, and that's why we love Dan Carlin. He pulls first person accounts from both the Russian foot soldier that was there and General Patton or whoever. He gets various viewpoints on it on that Dan Carlin Hardcore History podcast, which is why we enjoy that so much. And I'm sure Larry Blair has got a different take on it even now. Like I'm sure he would hear what I just read and kind of maybe go, that's not how it happened or what, like I'm sure, things change, right? History is interesting that way. A couple things for you. Go ahead. No, you go.
I was going to say my second thought was just how effective localism and aggression works in a lineup. Like, not only did it prevent him from winning that heat, it really derailed the rest of his competitive interest.
Yeah, it's interesting. Our tribal, that we sort of go to default in many cases, and that's kind of like surfers are the worst type stuff. And when my ego starts to get involved in, I mean, it's a competition. So on some level, I'm like, you know what? There's other guys that would have paddled around it and flipped them off, and who knows what would have happened. But I mean, when you're staring down 5 pretty gnarly professional surfers in that era, by the way, and your time's probably up. By the way, I've been in a heat where I was surrounded by Hawaiians and told that basically tacitly shut down on advancing through a heat. And it was heavy, and I was a young kid and I'll just say that I deserved it because prior to the heat, I was quite vocal about having to rerun the Repicharge heat. I think I've told you this story.
Yeah, you have. Yeah. But so I don't think that surfers are the worst, or I think it's not surfers that are, mandating this mentality. It's a human instinct where there's a finite resource and you want to protect it, and somebody is taking more than their share. That is a normal thing to try to blockade. But you are right in that a different person would power or has powered through in the past. And so maybe it's not make it out of that heat, but it is show up again in Hawaii next year and double down and do it again. And I feel like that's where we saw Adriano de Souza, let's say, push through, where now the Brazilian Storm is blown past any of that. Like, there's no version of Hawaiians trying to circle Gabriel Medina or Italo and try to blockade them from doing anything, because it's like everybody's just thrown up their hands. Those guys are going to paddle for every single wave, get every single wave, and surf it better than anybody else in the lineup. So, but I remember Adriano de Souza being one of the first who really had to land better airs, get deeper barrels, catch bigger waves, surf them better for years and years and years and years before he would get the scores that he was earning, arguably.
Yeah, and sometimes the tribal conflicts are intertribal. And I've told you the time that I saw Johnny Boy Gomes and Jamie O'Brien go at it, a young 18-year-old. I think Jamie was 18, and it was the Pipe Masters. And here's Johnny Boy Gomes, who was just a force at Pipeline for at least a decade or more. And the confrontation wasn't even in the water, but Jamie had to overcome an intertribal confrontation on land psychologically, and then still go out there and be able to deal with it, and tip the cap to Jamie. He did it. Here's
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry just
Yeah.
before we move on
Okay.
from it. That is surfing. You said surfers are the worst, and I said no, that's just kind of a finite resource thing. But surfing is the one place where that still exists. Not the one, but one of the few. Like in our modern society in Southern California, where it's, an advanced civilization in a lot of other ways, you go out in the water and it exists like a hunter and gatherer society still.
And I hate it. I actually don't enjoy that about it anymore. It's just, I try to get away from that. And I'm sure a lot of people that are aging in the surf culture are the same way. It's one thing in Hawaii where there's a lot of, you know, backstory around the taking of the Hawaiian Islands by the Marines, and it's draped with more than just Southern California, driving around in Newport Beach in my Mercedes Benz and getting out in the water and flipping you off. It's like, dude, come on, what are you kidding me? But at least in Hawaii there is this sense of
Order.
geopolitical, even if it's sort of a dressed down geopolitical drama or tone or theme.
Well, I think in Hawaii, there's more order. First of all, the waves are better. So the resource is better and there's more of it to go around. And then there's the history and tradition that you're talking about that is still being honored to this day. And so there's a certain order there that you're just more obligated and willing to adhere to. Yeah, in Southern California, it's all been thrown out the window. And you're right, because the guy drives a Mercedes, he thinks he's entitled to a wave. And that's the part that's palatable for us.
Yeah. Well, here's a thought. Should we get a campaign going to somehow get Larry Blair his 2 trophies? And for that matter, all the past Pipe Masters winners that never got trophies. I mean, eventually they started giving guys trophies. Guys were leaving with brand new Jerry Lopez shaped surfboards. Larry Blair deserves a trophy. How hard is it? Trophies, you can get a trophy for $29.99 at trophiesrs.com. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's get the guy a trophy. Come on. Get the
So
past winners a trophy. We need a campaign. Go ahead.
I like it a lot. There's two ways we could do this. I noticed if the internet says enough to the WSL will actually take that advice by then inviting Lane Davey to come speak at the conference for the women's pipe event that's coming up, opening ceremony type conference, which just happened. So that's one method. Just put pressure on the WSL to buy a couple extra trophies, give them to past winners. Or we can crowdfund it and do the whole thing ourselves, which would have a little less gravitas, but maybe
Well,
more organic, feel good story.
I feel like we've done our part. If the internet world picks this up and runs with it, so be it. Maybe a Reddit community jumps on it and forces the hand of the WSL. Perhaps Dave Prodan will hear this and go, hey, you know what? That's not a bad idea. I mean, it would actually be a really easy public relations move and a
Totally.
deserved one. Everyone would go, that's cool. You know what? That's pretty cool. Because, like, really, a cool trophy is going to cost you, what, $100? How many do you need to make? You know, I don't know.
Great
Let's say
question. How many?
15.
10?
Maybe
15.
okay. Let's say 15. Just okay. So $1,500. You don't got $1,500 for an insanely killer PR campaign? I think you do.
Well, yeah, that and it gives them a lot of talking points. They have a lot of dead air to fill during a pipe event, and so this gives them a lot of talking points that then builds into their history, which
The
is just great
history.
for the brand in general.
Yeah. I mean, this story actually that we read, should be talked about during the podcast. And there's so many, and they do a good job, by the way. They do a job of bringing up some past history, and I
Yeah.
think it's enjoyable. I think it's great. Um, by the way,
So
yeah, go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you, do you know what type of boards Larry Blair was riding to victory in 78 and 79?
What brand
Yeah, the Shaper.
or style? What shaper?
There
Hot
weren't
butter.
brands. I guess there were brands.
Yeah,
Hot
exactly.
butter. Hot butter. Terry Fitzgerald. Do you think Terry Fitzgerald shaped Larry Blair's surfboards? That's a
I'm just
good
I'm just
guess.
guessing out
You
of
know
the
what?
then I have no idea. Like I've seen images of Larry Blair, but I can't identify a logo on his board.
Well, Jeff McCoy is the shaper, legendary shaper. Jeff McCoy is the guy who made Larry's boards. Now, of course, this leads into guess what? We've got some McCoys in the upcoming California Gold Surf Auction, with bidding beginning April 5th and ending the 19th. We don't have Larry Blair's McCoys. And wow, where are those boards? This is that classic era where Larry Blair probably just stashed those boards under, Bernie Baker's house at Sunset Beach or something. And who knows what happened to those boards? They might still be there. They could be under, Mark Martinson's house or something. Mark Martinson, underneath his house, he's got so many boards. I remember poking my head under there one time and just going, "Oh my God, what's under there?" And you could tell that it had probably been picked through by Randy or Mark himself. But anyway, Larry Blair McCoy's riding to victory, and pretty cool
At the
little story.
at the California Gold Surf Auction, you say?
Pardon me?
Those boards are going to be available at the California Gold Surf
No,
Auction.
no, I'm saying I wish they were. We've got McCoys,
Oh,
but they're not
no, 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 but
those.
the McCoys. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, two McCoy. We got two McCoys. They're like modern California built twin fin. One's a Shane Horan single fin lasers app thing that Shane designed, and one's a Greg Pouch McCoy twin fin from the Newport Beach area, like an
So
Echo Beach vibe.
when is the auction?
The auction takes place April 5th through April 19th. And
Gotcha.
yeah.
Um,
So,
so
yeah, go ahead.
well, did you see about a month or two ago, there was actually an article written on Beach Grid about Larry Blair. His father's criminal. So his dad was a bank robber and he
No
got
way.
killed. He got tortured
Wow.
and killed for $500,000.
In Australia?
Yeah.
How do you get explain this story to me? I need to know. I've got
So
questions.
there's books written about it. There was a movie made about it, I guess 10 or 15 years ago, but there were a murderous gang called the Toe Cutters. And his father was involved with the gang and they did a heist. They robbed a bank or a couple of different banks. And I think some of the money went missing. And so the gang members turned on one another and were torturing his dad, Larry Blair's dad, cut off a couple of his toes to try to find out where the money was. And he ends up being killed.
Wow.
Yeah. So let me see. There was a movie in 1978 film called Money Movers. Um, but yeah, I guess one of the guys wrote a tell-all book more recently, and that's where this information came from. I'll figure out the name of the book real quick.
Every time I Google toe cutter, Mad Max comes up. I guess it was a gang in the Mad Max films. And I wonder if that's where they got the name for their gang.
Maybe. So actually Larry Blair, this was Larry Blair wrote this book along with Jeremy Goring. And you can get it on Amazon. The book's called The Outside: Cheating, Death, Chasing Waves, and Growing Up in Australia's Most Notorious Crime Families. So the
Wow.
Larry Blair biography, his dad, Baldy Blair, was a bank robber. His mom, Patricia, was a beautiful jewel thief who regularly hosted all-star gatherings of underworld personalities, dreaming up their next heist from the comfort of their family home. A record-breaking armed robbery and brutal murder led to the family fleeing the notorious toe cutters gang, climbing out of motel windows, escaping from planes, and hiding out in desert caves. In the aftermath, the victorious gang war that followed, and hired in the aftermath of the vicious gang war that followed, and tired of the family arm tussling for control of the future, teenage Blair decided he wanted out. His exit plan, a very long surf trip and dangerous journey of self-discovery into some of the most exotic and forbidden places on Earth.
That's pretty cool. I'm checking it out too online, and wow, that's such an interesting sort of turn to the left that we took here after talking about Lariat Pipeline. I had no idea about
Well,
this. That's so cool.
now that I think about it, it's all coming together.
Hmm.
I think that murder of his father happened before the pipe stuff. He actually ended up in Hawaii, I think at the age of 15, and started cutting his teeth there. And that's how he ended up at Pipe, winning those events.
Wow, that's so cool.
What a
Well,
backstory.
that's a good backstory. That needs to be talked about on the WSL podcast. Talk about keeping me engaged.
This
I'll
guy
stay.
won events, doesn't have trophies, and he's written books about it. And here
I
we are
mean,
just learning.
it's so great. I'm gonna come for the contest, and I'm gonna stay for the Larry Blair anecdotes. That's amazing.
Well, what's the forecast looking like? Pipe, the opening day was 2 days ago, the 27th. And how's it looking?
It's looking, I think, really good. I believe basically this is just based on Surfline's forecast. So it's not like I did some deep dive with, all my forecasting tools and came up with something that nobody else has. According to Surfline, February 1st through February 5th looks really good. The 4th looks, if they could go the first, second, third, and end it on the 4th. According to Surfline, it's the best day of that week. It's 8 to 12 feet, good conditions. Wouldn't that be great to end it on the best day rather than begin it on the best day? We have to wait and see. Mother Nature, has a way of kind of changing things, especially in Pacific Islands where winds can be, you know, the forecast on winds changes just based on low pressures and where those move relative to other things. So it's not quite as easy as it is here on this big fat piece of land known as North America. Tell me, what are your thoughts on how many days does it run? Does it take? Do you even know? I don't even know. How many days does it take if you run full event window?
Yeah.
Is it 4 days?
In the past year or two, it's been 3.5.
Okay, so they can do this and even have a little break if the wind is weird in the morning and they got to wait for it to settle in.
But didn't they up the number of women surfers this year?
They did.
So
Or is
that
that
would, I
next year?
think,
Does that start next year? Maybe. I'm not
I
sure.
know. I can't exactly remember. I could look it up real quick. Um, yeah, so you're right, next year. There's 17 on tour now instead of 24 on the women's side. So yeah, 3.5 days is the amount of time it takes.
So Saturday, the 1st of February, that might be a day to, if you want to watch the whole event and see it kick off. It's, going to be apparently, 5 to 7 feet, maybe some 8 foot sets. And then it's kind of like that for a few days, but good conditions according to Surfline. And again, then that last, or not the last day, but the 4th, which is a Tuesday, looks like it could be really good, 8 to 12 feet. So we'll see, usually
Not
Surfline, you got to
not
kind of
pumping.
not pumping, and you got to kind of temper. Usually 8 to 12 feet, 5 days out on Surfline turns into 6 to 8 feet by the time it rolls around. So we'll see what happens. But relative
Well,
to the other like bookends of the waiting period, this is the time as far as conditions are concerned.
yeah, I mean, you were the first person I've ever see this last couple of weeks to express optimism about the forecast for this event because it was all doom and gloom leading into this. And certainly the opening waiting period, they just called off the first few days. They're like, don't even come back and check tomorrow. It's not going to be doing it. So that's the moment that we're in right now with eyes focused on the weekend. But the other news since we recorded last week, the big story last week was that John exited or opted to take the year off. The news since then is, guess what? He's back for pipe. He's going to be competing in the pipe
You're
event.
kidding.
No,
Really?
you didn't
I
know
had no
this?
idea. No, just for pipe.
Yeah, just for pipe.
Wow.
You thinking
What?
about your survival implications?
A little bit, but not, a little bit. I mean, I'm going to change. If he's the only guy, everyone's picking John John. If this is the only event he's going to do,
Okay, right. So yes, that's logical. And I had John on my survival list, and then he announced that he was taking the season off, I had to go back in there and change him out. When he got added back in, I was like, everybody's going to put him on their team.
Yes.
Now, that means
You're hoping
because
for a John loss right now. You're
so you don't want to write exactly. This could wipe out three
Everyone.
quarters of
Least.
I'm not taking John, even though I believe that he could win the event. I'm not
Yes.
going to take him on the off chance that he doesn't.
This is how you win Survival League, Surfival League. This is how you do it. You go against the majority, move against the majority here.
So
By the way, yeah,
I was going to share with you my pick and my strategy.
Please do.
Look, if I was a more prudent gambler, I would keep tight lips. I would smoke screen you, tell you to go picks, whoever. But I have an obligation to our listeners here, not to give you advice because often it's terrible advice and you shouldn't take it, but just to pull back the curtain on the way that my brain is working. I picked a very unlikely Kanoa Igarashi.
Wow.
I just had a full gut instinct moment, which is going to prove probably to hurt me. But it was like Kanoa's won out there. He's made 2 finals out there before. So, and when I looked at the forecast, it's not pumping and it could just be north swell, backdoor. It might not be big backdoor. Who is reliable in shifty conditions, almost no matter where it is in the world? Kanoa. Kanoa's going to figure it out. He's going to, if it's 6 foot in barreling or 8 foot in barreling, he's going to do that. If it's 3 foot, you definitely don't want a pipe specialist on your team. 3 foot, Kanoa's going to blow the fins out. He's going to get a couple of 7s. He's not going to make a priority mistake. Kanoa's my man.
That's a really good safe pick, and your strategy, your thought, thinking it through, it makes tons of sense. I guess you're assuming it's going to be smallish backdoor. I actually
even if it's not.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah. I mean, Kanoa is a good pick. I saw a picture of him at the WSL Awards, the red carpet. They had a stand and repeat. And he was dressed rather dapper, but he didn't look happy. He looked...
Say more.
Well, I don't want to read too much into it. I mean, he's standing for one photograph that I saw, but there, I just remember looking at the pictures. I don't know who's a Surfer or Stab or somebody sent out some pictures, and I looked at them. Or it was a video, actually. It was a video of people walking down the red carpet.
Is he trying to Mad Dog people?
No, I don't think it was Mad Dog. It could have been anything. It could have been I overdressed for this event because people walking down the red carpet, some of them are dressed like they just came from Foodland. Others are dressed full next level tilt. This is a black tie affair. Others are somewhere in the middle. Many look like they could be busboys at,
Carrabba's,
Haleiwa Joe's. And so there was a mishmash of fashion statements. And what I saw was Kanoa was like, oh man, I overdressed. And
oh, really?
When you're overdressed, you kind of got to, it looked like he was disappointed that he maybe overdressed relative to the others. But again, this is full on conjecture. I'm not here to diss anyone's what they wear. I mean, look what I'm wearing. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just saying that he didn't look happy. I'm saying he didn't look happy.
I'm here for it. This conjecture is what we're all about. I am here.
This belongs on the grid. Actually, this is not what our show's about.
It's not what our show's about, but I love, this is the parking lot fodder that we all kind of, deep down kind of want to engage in. But here's my thought. When I see the WSL award things, those pro surfers never look comfortable dressed up. You're right. There's some who do dress up, but I look at them and I'm like, you don't look comfortable. And you look so out of place. It's really, really weird because they're good looking. They're fit. The clothes in theory should hang perfectly on them. They just look so uncomfortable in their own skin. But Kanoa, I did not see what you're talking about. I would be shocked. I mean, I guess he's underperformed. If I look at his track record in recent years, there's been times where he doesn't make it out of that round of 32. just the last year or two. So I don't know what's going on with his confidence. I'm almost inclined to go back and watch what you're
It's
talking
just,
about to try to read into it.
don't take too much into this now. I will say this to give you some insight. He was dressed in, and help me out here. That look was, that look of like 1940s LA, like Hispanic street culture, really like looking tight. There's a name for it, like zoot suity, like
I don't
kind of
know
a
what the
zoot
name is.
suit. Like, when I say zoot
Okay.
suit, does that help
Zoot
you?
suit, I think of, yeah, I think more like Harlem from the 40s or
That was
20s.
kind of the vibe. That was kind of the vibe, like a hard pressed,
Okay.
uh, you know,
Pleat
a pleat
seam.
and
Yeah.
dark and yeah. So you were going to say I interrupted you.
Well, no, I just, when you say Kanoa looks unhappy, I have a thought where it's like, dude, so you have more, your contracts are still among the highest ever in surfing.
I'm not
When
saying he's
everybody else,
unhappy. I'm just saying he looked unhappy. Like we can't. I'm just
hear
saying.
me out, hear
The
me out.
one
I'm not
moment
putting
I
this
saw
on
him,
you.
I thought, okay,
I'm not putting this on you. I interviewed Chloe and Dino a few weeks ago or published it a few weeks ago.
yeah,
And so I'll lump Chloe in with this too, where Kanoa's gotten more, he's gotten paid better and he's had more limelight, privilege, resource, got to surf the greatest waves on the planet for the last 20 plus years. 99% of his life, he's been traveling, surfing great waves. And yet has not achieved his potential. Not that I put on him, but that he put on himself. He's been wanting to win world titles. He's won a couple of events, and he's finished near the top 5 a couple of times, but he has not achieved his own personal potential. And so I think that's where he's at, maybe mentally. And that's where we've seen the last couple of years is that starting to shake because it was unwavering confidence that got him to the win at Karamas or wherever. Or I accidentally said that he won pipe. He did not win pipe. He has 2 finals at pipe. Um, so that's what got him there. But when you don't push through that for 5 years straight, then you start to question. And when
yeah.
somebody zips up the back end, like an Ethan Ewing or whatever, who wasn't even there when you started, and they're making the top 5 and all that sort of stuff, then it starts to really shake your confidence.
I would agree with you. There does seem to be, I think, with every competitor, no matter what the sport, if you're sort of, anointed as the next great thing, and you get a lot of, resources, money thrown your way, a lot of adulation early on, and then you don't quite get there. There's that period in your career where you're like, oh, you're sitting back, and now new guys are coming up, and it might be your time has come and gone. I don't know. I Kanoa is a competitive beast. He's incredible, and I think it would be. I love these come from behind stories. I would love it if somehow he rose above it all and found his way and had his sort of that Kelly Slater letting go moment where he's like, you know what, to win I must surrender. And we'll see. It's interesting, but wouldn't that be an interesting way to do your survival picks? Is just see how people are dressed before the event and then solely make your pick based on fashion.
That would be a very interesting strategy. I'm not going to implement that, but I do think it is worth at least considering the headspace and all that sort of thing. I think that's a
Yeah.
huge factor. Um, and even still, I don't believe that Kanoa has, let's say, the talent to necessarily push from position 6 to position 1. I think if he does, this is the year where he should do it because there's no John and Gabriel. This might be the only opportunity, but I just think other surfers have more talent than he has. Um, so I don't know, but I'm
Well,
still keeping him on my team. I like him I still have the gut instinct.
okay. Well, and let me say this too, that the way the format is with the WSLCT is it does lend himself, or it does lend itself to those guys that can make it to the top 5, be in the top 5, and then have a day, just have a day. And frankly,
Yeah,
Kanoa can have a day. Kanoa
that's true.
totally has the competitive chops to be in the top 5 and mow through the field, and in the final, get some insane waves at the last minute, come out with his hands, and he's our world champion. Kanoa has that. And frankly, almost all of the guys will have that if it's at cloud break. If it's at lowers, Kanoa still does, but we know that guys like Connor Coffin might not, even though he's in the top five. So cloud break is a great equalizer for those guys that can just get in there, are very much worthy of being in the top five and then having a day.
I've got a real out of left field pick for you. You said maybe do your survival fit picks based on their attire. You could also do a strategy, which is look at their Hawaii edit going into the opening day of competition. And one, Jordy Smith dropped a couple bangers. Jordy, free surfing still is at the absolute top of his game. He's obviously never been able to pull it together for an entire season. We talk about him at the beginning of every season for the last decade and say, is this going to be his year? If it's not his year, that he's too long in the tooth. He's too old. He has to do it now. That would be the ultimate underdog story if Jordy Smith in this year came through and won it all.
I'm here for it. I'm totally here for it. It made me realize, you think of like big, tall, powerful Aki or Ocker type of, gangly surfers. And the one that comes to mind is Simon Anderson. Simon Anderson won pipe. He won bells. He was an incredible surfer, but we never put anything on him like, oh, he's got to be the world champion. It was just like, he's Simon. He's incredible. He makes great boards, and he's just everyone appreciates his surfing, and he's incredible, and he's a big, tall guy, and if it's big and powerful, he'll do well. And we never heaped that on him. And I think the same could be said for like Bede Durbridge. We never really heaped on, he's doing well, so he should win the world title. For some reason with Jordy, he's a big, tall, powerful surfer, and he got that from the industry. He got that, you're the next guy. And it could be, obviously it's not completely parallel. There was a lot of early junior surfing that he was doing that was just mind blowing. And he did some of the first on film, on video, radical aerials, Supermans and stuff at I think Lance's or Macaroni's or wherever he was. He did some stuff that made us kind of go that way. And back then with Simon, there wasn't all that edit around to make you kind of pour on the adulation. So, and just a thought, maybe we're not being fair.
Yeah.
I would love it if Jordy did that,
I honestly, I am rooting for it. But when I watched that clip, I realized I said, Kanoa, I think, doesn't have the talent of some of the other surfers on tour. Jordy does. Jordy has a talent that is otherworldly. And when you combine it all, it's unmatched by anybody on tour other than maybe Gabriel Medina. And maybe John, now that I think about it. Jordy's power is what I was going to say is the difference. But those two surfers have equivalent amount of power. But guess what? They're not on tour this year. So Jordy really could. This would be the ultimate kind of comeback underdog story.
Yeah, and as I think about Jordy too, I think to myself, he had all that pressure on him to be the world champion. His career moved through. He surfed great. He won events. He's still one of the best in the world, and everyone loves watching him surf. But he also, I would say, in the last 3 or 4, maybe 5 years, he had sort of a letting go moment where he's like, "Look, I'm just on tour. There's all these new guys. I'm no longer in the limelight necessarily." And I'm enjoying my time on tour, and I'm working with my dad and we're shaping boards. And so he had sort of this, like, for lack of a better phrase, like a letting go moment, like a moment where, and he did well. I think it was last year or the year before did really well. I think he was in the top 5, wasn't he? Or he was almost there. Anyway.
Momentarily, every season he has moments of greatness, but he can't pull it together for the full season.
And he did have I remember a couple of years ago, I was like, watch out for Jordy Smith. And you're like, I don't know, man. I think it's over for him, And he had a great season. And I wonder though, too, like there's a fine line between having like a letting go moment and still focusing and doing really well on when you need to on tour.
Yeah.
And a for lack of a better phrase, and cover your ears if you're young, a fuck it moment where he's just like, there's a difference between letting go and fuck it, I don't even care. Like, you know what I mean? And that's when you do well because you don't care. But when there's a moment in not caring where, you do need to care now, you're actually going to maybe make the final 5. Like, we need to massage that. I think we need to get that into a focused place, where probably a coach is helpful.
I'm feeling good about it. The more I think about it, the more I want this story to take place. And so
Me too.
mark my words, January 29th, on whatever episode of Spit this is, lock it in. This is where the prediction was made.
Well, this is a great segue into what I'm going to tell you now, and that is New Year's predictions gone wrong. And one of mine, one of mine has already gone wrong, and I'm going to hold you to the fire here. Do you have what it takes to replace my New Year's prediction gone wrong with Jordy Smith? And my New Year's prediction gone wrong was I told you a couple 3 weeks ago that John Florence was going to beat Gabe Medina at Cloudbreak in the WCT final and be the world champion. And oh, by the way, announce another child on the way and that he was going to retire. That's not going to happen. That prediction's already out the window. So, do you and or I have the ability to say, you know what is going to happen at Cloudbreak? Jordy Smith is going to beat, let's say, Ethan or Italo in the final at Cloudbreak and become the world champion. Wouldn't that be great? I'm here for that.
Totally. Yes. That is the greatest storyline that none of us saw coming until this very day. But like I said, I watched that Hawaii free surf couple of clips and I'm like, bang, he's got everything it takes to win a world title. So, yes, Jordy, this is it. This is your year.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens. I'm writing it down right now. It's
Yeah,
it's
stick with it.
your
Now,
New Year's prediction.
here's another interesting tidbit. A friend texted me and was like, I wonder which surf brand has the most world titles with a sponsor. You know, Kelly Slater with Quicksilver probably, but certainly Rip Curl has a bunch now too between,
Roxy,
yeah, Roxy, obviously. Uh,
Lisa.
Billabong has a few. And then he said, which one has the least? And I immediately thought O'Neill. O'Neill
Yeah.
probably has zero. Well, guess what? Jordy's been long and proudly wearing the O'Neill. And that might be their very first world title if he
It
does it.
kind of depends though. Like, I mean, Sean Thompson was wearing O'Neill when he won a world title, you
Oh,
know?
was he? Okay, then
Oh
there's one.
yeah. I mean, it just depends. Like back then, all the sponsorships were sort of broken up. There wasn't one like lead head thing like O'Neill or Billabong or Quicksilver, you know, like that came along probably with Tom Carroll's first $1 million contract. I think I want to say it was 86 or 88. I think it was 88, 89. That might have been the first time they went, boom, Tom, you're our guy. You know, you're don't nothing else but Quicksilver on your board. And I could be
Well,
wrong. That would be an interesting little side note to figure out too.
it is. And Rusty actually talked about that on our live show a little bit where um, Billabong wanted Aki, but Aki was riding Rusty's. And Gordon Merchant actually had the conversation with Rusty. It was just like, no way, dude. You got to move that logo down. He can't wear the Rusty clothing. We need to define the categories, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Interesting times back then.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so who is did you lock in a survival pick? And by the way, we said with Survival League that you have to get your picks in before the start of the season. Even though the opening window started on the 27th, I think you can still get a pick in until the opening heat. So you can't join the season after the opening heat. You literally have to join the entire season beforehand. But now we're still in that window.
Well, let's take a quick break. I'm going to refresh my elderberry tea
Ooh, moved on from oolong.
from Montana. The water's boiled to an oolong temperature. This is a elderberry tea high in polyphenols, by the way.
Is oolong temp like 160 or where are we at?
190, 190.
190. Wow. Okay.
Just yeah. So I'll be right back and I'll tell you who my survival pick is. I told you last week I may have changed it.
Tea time.
Welcome back.
That's healing in a cup right there, man.
Hey, you know what's cool about, by the way, this is Montana Elderberry is the company. They're out of Bozeman. And you know what I love about this company is that they just take the holidays off. And I mean, everything's like their e-commerce doesn't run. They just have a thing that says, you know what, we'll be back January 5th or whatever it is. They're just gone. You can't order anything. There's no one fulfilling orders. And I appreciate that. I think that's that speaks to probably some family values.
I agree. There's probably like Chick-fil-A does Sundays off, right? And every business person in the world would say that's a terrible idea. But I bet they can show you on a spreadsheet that it's not a terrible idea. Like
And
that
even
there is.
regardless of the spreadsheet, I think if you're a spreadsheet determinant, that's where you've missed the mark. Although, every single MBA in the world is going to tell me I'm wrong. But I
But
just
but to
think the
my
family
point,
values thing is endearing. So if you see that, you're like, you know what? I like this company. I'm going to come back on January 5th.
that's exactly my point, is that those customers still show up. They'll
Yeah.
show up and they're more loyal, like the kind of brand affiliation that you foster with the customer is you can't buy that in any other way. So I like
I
it.
don't I don't even know these people. I don't know anything about them, but I feel like I know them. I feel like because of that gesture, I'm like, I, I, I'm going to send them a Christmas gift or something. You know what I mean?
All right.
I'm appreciative. Yeah.
All right. Next year, no podcasting through the holidays.
Wait a minute.
This isn't
People
really
want to hear
work.
from us.
This isn't really work.
By the
Um,
way, this
yeah.
year, I just realized, I'll just toot my own horn. This could be my 20th year of doing surf talk, with a
So,
microphone in front of me. Like I started in
so that would have
'05.
been 2005. Yeah.
Yeah, probably
We got to
later.
dig up episode 1, dude.
I know. I remember episode 1. It was me and Sam George joined me, and Don Meek, who was my boss, like just had to get in and be involved in that. And yeah, it was interesting. It was
He's
and
still trying. He's
Kevin
still trying to get
McCormick
involved.
produced it. Yes, Kevin McCormick produced it, and I've told you the story, but I literally purchased like $30,000 worth of radio equipment. I'm not kidding. Like we had it all set up so you could call in. We had to. Poor Kevin McCormick tried to figure out how to do it all, and so the no echoing, all the little nightmare. You needed to be a friggin' sound engineer at least to figure all this stuff out, and he was like reading documents. And anyway, it's a hell of a story.
How was that investment? Was that a
It
wise
wasn't my
investment?
money. It was not a good investment. It was not a good investment.
Well,
That equipment never got used and it sat there. And then when Surfers sold and closed its doors, by then that equipment was obsolete. It was probably worth $10.
totally. Yeah. I mean, the good news is it was an investment in your future because here you are 20 years later still doing it, but bad spend for Surfer.
It was.
That's hilarious. We will do hard to find that first episode and at least the date. I want to know what the actual date of your
I'm
20-year
glad you brought
anniversary
that
is.
up because I'm wondering if maybe it was '06. I've always thrown out '05. Like I think it was '05. I don't recall. Kevin McCormick, I bet, would remember the exact date. But yeah,
Okay. We'll
maybe
get to
I'm
the
getting
bottom of
ahead of
this.
myself. Yeah.
Um, in Scott's garage, in a box next to all of his fins, he probably has the original
I
tapes,
do.
cassette tapes. Who is your Surfival pick for
Oh,
pipe?
so I have stuck with my pick. It's Kelly Slater. It's the first time I've ever felt kind of queasy about picking Kelly at pipe for some reason,
Okay.
but I'm not going John. I'm going to stick with Kelly. And I imagine he's going to be in the draw. He's going to be pretty down, a lower seed. So
Yeah, the
he
draw, the
could he
draw is
could
already
meet
set.
John early, you know?
Yeah,
Don't they
interesting.
mix it up though after round 1? Don't they reseed it?
Yeah, they do.
He's
Okay, I
going to
got
meet
the draw
somebody
pulled up.
somebody up high is going to meet Kelly in round 2 or 3, I think, if he gets through the first.
Um, so John Florence is in Heat 6 against Ian Gavea and Eli Hanneman. Kelly Slater, I do not see immediately. Oh, he's against Italo and Samuel Pupo, which is a tough draw.
That's a very tough draw. And what does it have his seed number?
No, it doesn't.
Mm.
But the other thing is that's a tough heat for Kelly if the waves aren't great.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
I don't have a
Kanoa,
problem with him not getting through his first heat. I see him not getting through his first heat. He'll use that as like I'm just getting used. First time I surfed in 3 weeks. I'm just getting, getting used
right.
to it. And then he'll kind of find his game. And yeah.
Kanoa has Ria Waida and Joel Vaughn, which I feel pretty good about. And then Jordy has Imai Kalani DeVault and George Patar, two Channel Islands team riders. So, all right. Well, we'll see where all this goes shortly. Nike has re-entered the chat. Nike is the brand that I teased at the beginning of the episode, re-entering the surf space and throwing some money around. And they've hired sponsored two athletes. Italo Italo Ferreira on the Brazilian side, and then Sierra Kerr on the women's side. And I began seeing the Nike swoosh on their boards a while back, which was low. And I've just figured, oh, maybe it's just like a shoe sponsor. But Italo made a massive announcement yesterday or the day before, which seemed to have his surfboard wiped clean with only one logo on it. So I'm wondering if maybe they did a head-to-toe deal for a big paycheck now.
And I wonder if those deals are solely based on their social media presence. I'm not sure how many Sierra Kerr has, but
not solely. I mean, I think it is based on.
I mean, I'm just wondering, like, I look at it like, why did they pick those two? Like, I went, okay, they want South America. Nike wants to like get into the South American market deeper. Maybe they see room to grow there. And then I think, well, Sierra Kerr, like Nike doesn't need to grow anymore in the North American. I mean, they're pretty solid. Why Sierra? And then I thought,
she has 100. She has 133,000, by the way.
That's just sort of, that's good, but it's just sort of whatever. It's relative to like Gabe, or I bet, how many does Italo have? He probably has millions.
Millions. Yeah, let me check.
So yeah, that's an interesting move, but maybe it's all relative to female surfers. Like if you look at female surfers, Sierra probably is right in the top 5 as far as followers.
Well, Italo has 3 million. And so I think Nike is all about performance, right? Like that's it. Whether you're winning on a
define performance, like 3 million followers is a pretty high performance.
That's a good point. But they're all about athletic performance as well. And I had the same exact thought, which was, why these two people? And my first thought was Italo is the wrong pick. But then my second thought was Italo is exactly Nike, which is why I think Nike will come in for a short period of time, as they did last time, and then disappear. They're not in it for the long haul. I guess a lot of that was informed by the How Surfers Get Paid series, which I was watching, which is, we will do a deeper dive next week, but I'll just give you a little backstory. It's focused on Craig Anderson. And it's kind of, the conversation is about quantifying money spent on surfers. How do you quantify these things? Is it just world titles? It's not, and what is this it factor, and how do you define it? And I think, so I was watching that with Craig Anderson, who you cannot look away from, by the way. You see imagery of him, whether it's moving video or just a photograph, and you'll watch it until they take it off the screen. And not all surfing is that way. Not all surfers are that way. And so that has major impact for the brand. But then I got to thinking about it, because Stephen Bell was being interviewed, and he goes, look, there's a million Craig Andersons. What? So you tuck your knee, you do a bottom turn, you grow your hair long? Like, who gives a crap? There's a million of those. And he's right. So the brand's endorsement of the athlete actually adds gravity to the athlete's surfing. Number one, they're pumping it out there for us a lot more. So we're going to see a lot more of the imagery. But the second thing is just that affiliation. Once you and I see that sticker on the board, we're now clued in. We see that Nike swoosh go on Italo's board, and we're now like, okay, what's he going to do this year? Is he going to earn that paycheck? Is he going to level up? There's something behind it. So if they would have made that decision about Joao Chianca, we would now be like paying extra close attention to Joao. So it's an interesting analysis, just to see how they make those decisions, how they try to justify them, and the return that they do or don't get on that investment.
Yeah, I had the same question that you did. Like, why do they choose these two surfers? And the other thought I had while you were discussing this was, the photographers and the videographers are not getting paid enough, and they need to get paid more. Because I thought of Craig Anderson, and the first thing I think of when I think of Craig Anderson is him. I think it was at Can Do We Left, and it's just a big mean roll in, and he's just doing this, what Belly said, knock knee, long hair, sole arch bottom turn, which are happening right now every day around the world. Everyone's doing it. But that image drove me to seek out more Craig Anderson. And then you see all and I just feel like without the image, I wouldn't care about Craig Anderson. There was one image. Now I care about Craig Anderson. And I don't know if the photographer got his due. And I'm not sure he can get his due because I think there's just probably too many photographers. And so, there's a glut, uh, a supply glut, or too much supply. So anyway, that was one thought. I
Great
think
point.
the photographers and the videographers should demand more, especially when their guy they're shooting rides for Nike, you know? And now, of course,
Yeah.
Elo can go, I don't need you. I'll just get a cheaper guy. And that's usually how it works. But okay, that aside, um, Italo kind of reminds me of, first of all, with a marketing brain on him, I can do a lot with Italo. And it made me think of the Bo Jackson campaign with Nike, where they're like, Bo, don't surf or whatever. Bo knows football, Bo knows hockey, Bo knows F1 racing. And he wasn't even the personality that Italo is. Italo's bubbling. Bo was a little bit more contained, but they brought it out in him, and he was kind of in the back of those campaigns. And then at the end, he went, Bo knows F1, or whatever. Like they would bring him in at the very end. But so
Great campaign.
I can see Italo having a wonderful Nike campaign that transcends surfing. That's like, here's Italo on the friggin', the I don't know, one of the gymnastic bars or whatever, and here's Italo, and they kind of mimic that campaign. And Italo's so bubbly and big old smile with a gold tooth. Italo knows gymnastics. That would be kind of cool to bring that back because a lot of people don't even know about that campaign.
This is his moment to do that. I mean, you're right. If this isn't already in place, then it's a wasted amount of money. Like, there's no way they would just slap a sticker on his board and go, let's see what happens. Like, they have to be designing that exact thing to catapult him to the next level. Mike, when I said I think it's the wrong athlete, and then, well, I guess it's actually the right athlete for Nike, my thought was, I hate to see big moneyed interests coming in and not investing in the culture. They're just investing in trying to sell more product to this demographic. That's my concern, right? And when I look at the style of that Italo has embraced, the style of surfing and just his own personal style, it feels completely foreign to me. And when I say you can't look away from Craig Anderson, I definitely can look away from Italo. You know what I mean? There's the video clips. I want to see if he's going to stomp the thing. But if you just took a snapshot of any frame grab of the video clip, it's not graceful. It's not stylish, And so Italo's style of surfing, I think, represents something in the modern era that just whatever I don't connect to personally. But
see,
I don't
Italo
know.
moves the needle. My thing is Italo moves the needle. Italo transcends. And I'll tell you one other thing. The thing that's really fascinating in the last, say, 10 years is North American culture adopting and embracing American not non-American, European football, i.e. soccer. And the way that has created sort of a globalization of athletes. Like if you're a fan of pure football, European football or soccer, for lack of a better phrase, let's call it soccer. You're a fan of an Argentinian star and a star from Nambia and a star from Britain, and they're all on the same team together. They're so like they're international stars, but they're all on this one Premier League team, and then they move and then they play in the World Cup, and there's this mix of them, and I sense that Italo can do. Ilo's been gifted that we all already are sort of like, oh, cool, yeah, he's a Brazilian surfer. Like, there's no longer this regional thing in sport, and I think that European soccer, European football gets a lot of credit for that.
You're right. That is definitely happening. And if you take my what is their free surf clips in Hawaii say about their upcoming performance, Italo is shredding. Like Italo dropped a couple of clips, like massive alley oop. He did like a corked 360, like almost look like a flip. Like he's just out there. I think he's really empowered and inspired by having that swoosh on his board.
I agree. Italo moves the needle, transcends everything. I think that your mom and my dad could watch an Italo marketing campaign by Nike and be entertained. And I think and I'm sure that Nike's like, look, we're in with you guys through the Olympics. Let's see what happens.
Right. Yeah. In other surf news, looks like Surfline's editorial staff has been let go.
Oh,
I don't know if you've seen this, but I
I
don't
don't
know
know
how
anything
many.
about this. I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
This is all news to me.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they didn't report on this, but
Right.
just through listeners who have worked for Surfline, Nick Carroll was the head of the editorial. He's gone. So I don't know what this. I mean, obviously they invested in telling stories, and apparently they're no longer doing that. I don't know how many people actually went there to read up on that sort of thing. I certainly wasn't, so I guess maybe it just didn't get traction in the last year that they were trying it out. But maybe it's also reflective of just a doubling down on the forecasting, not trying to be everything.
Yeah, if I can just speak from my own experience, Surfline wasn't a place I went for editorial content. People go there for one reason and one reason only: cams and forecasts, and that's why they're the number one website around.
Yep.
Because that never changes. I mean, I'm going there right now to look at pipeline. Like that's not
Yep.
going to change. So it makes sense. There's so many other editorial distribution points. Stab, Surfers up to their game, the inertia, of course, all the YouTube channels, which are incredible, podcasts such as this one. Why fight that? That's an uphill battle. Especially
Yep.
when you go there. And if I see an editorial piece in my face on Surfline, I'm like, get that thing out of here. I'm trying to look at the cams.
I think their traffic probably told them exactly that. And
Yeah.
yeah, so sorry to see. Sorry, Nick Carroll. I have a listener call I wanted to play for you about Mike Hynson that came in after our show 2 weeks ago, if you'd like to hear that.
Sure.
Okay, a little sweet story to end the show on.
Hey guys, it's Taylor up in Northern California. This is for Spit. I wanted to comment on Mike Hynson's passing from a week ago. I was raised by my parents on the endless summer. My mom surfed Santa Cruz back as a teen. Her early 60s Hobie is still hanging in the garage. And I can't tell you how influential it was to me as a preteen and an early teen who decided to, grab this used Chuck Vinson that we had picked up from O'Neill back in the day and try to get out at 13 with no practice and no training to try and surf for the first time. And I cooped it so hard that I basically gave up on it for 30 plus years. And it hasn't been until very recently, as a 48-year-old now with a couple of teenagers of my own, where I've gotten out just the day after Mike passed, for my first surf lesson. And it was already something I wanted to do last Friday, was watch the endless summer with my kids before going out for the lesson. But when I heard that Mike had passed, I was like, well, we have to now. Like, there's no choice, and it was great. It was good. I didn't get to my feet, got to my knees. That was something. My eldest tapped out a little early, and that's okay. My youngest, shoot, he's a black belt in karate, and he almost got to his feet, and he wants to try again. And I'm going to try again. And, I'm going to make 2025 in honor of Mike the year that I get to my feet, that I finally make good on that 13-year-old's dream of getting out and surfing. So there you guys go. Thanks for everything you do. Keep up the good work, and have a great day.
Hynson's influence. Living
That's
on.
powerful. Yeah, that is so powerful. That's great, And I know Mike well enough to know that he would be stoked on that call. And just think what a powerful legacy that is, for Michael. That's so cool. And more power to the gentleman. Tyler, was it? Or Taylor? Tyler?
I don't recall.
It was
Sorry.
Taylor or Tyler. I will recommend this. Do some burpees, do some yoga. and that will help get to the feet quicker.
I was gonna say, even going to your knees first is probably it's gonna be hard to get from your knees to your feet. You got to go straight from laying position to your feet.
I think so. The good news is he's got cowls. What a great wave to learn on.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the call and thanks, Hynson. And that shows the power of influence, man. Those images that you're talking about of Craig Anderson at Kandui seared into everybody's brain,
Yeah.
like it is that kind of impactful when you do it right. That's what everybody's chasing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that
Well,
leaves me with my must-see moment presented by Treeswax. And this is now an assignment to you, Scott. How Surfers Get Paid, Season 2, Episode 6, featuring Craig Anderson. I'm just going to give you a couple little teasers that are going to make you want to go listen. They tell you the dollar amounts that Craig Anderson was getting paid through all of his Quicksilver paychecks. Um, and you can go find those. And then when he was ready to leave and when Quicksilver was going to file BK, they were offering him $500K a year for 5 years. And they offered Dane $1.2 million for 5 years, which would amount to 8 million over the course of the life. And they both said, no, thank you. They both said, you're not cool anymore. We're going to go do something else.
well, you know what? Those are our personal decisions based on values that apparently they hold very dearly. And
Nope, they don't.
no.
Because the moment their whole thing was like, you guys aren't cool. Like, I'm not showing up. I'm not going to take a photo wearing your shirt and like do a selfie on Instagram. Now those guys live entirely taking selfies on Instagram, shooting photos in their shoots, in their own shirts, on their websites, posing like exactly like they said they wouldn't do for Quicksilver and making a lot less
Yeah.
than 1.2 million bucks. So
Well,
I don't think it was their
I'm not sure
values.
it's
I
a
think there was
decision you and
something
I
else.
would have made. I think we would have made a, a different choice than, theirs. But
Well,
yeah,
the other interesting thing that they talk about is surfboard sales and how much athletes earn off of their board model. And
yeah,
interestingly, we all associate Craig Anderson with the Hypto Crypto. That
yeah.
was not his model, and he has not earned a dime off of that surfboard. And they share the numbers of those board sales and how much Hayden is generated off those board sales. And I encourage you to go watch it and get those numbers. We could talk about it
I
next
heard
week.
about this. Zeke told me a little bit about this last night when I was talking to him about this stuff. And he mentioned some of the things you just mentioned, and
When you
so I'm
say
looking
Zeke,
forward to it.
what you're talking about? Jacob Zekle, San
Yeah,
Diego
yeah,
Zeke.
Jacob. Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, okay, cool. What? That's an unlikely pair, an unlikely duo.
What do you
You and
mean?
Jake, you and Jake
Oh,
hanging out, having a cup of elderberry tea.
you'd be surprised. We have more in common than you might realize.
I
Um,
am surprised.
Let me tell you what my must-see moment presented by Treeswax. It's the show on Netflix, and it's called American Revival. Have you seen this?
Lauren watched it. She said it's great.
It's
I have
pretty
not seen it.
gnarly. It's pretty gnarly. It's about Utah and the West in whatever 1830, 1850, something like that, maybe 1860, and the Mormons and the government and the Shoshone and the other Indian tribes, and it's pretty gnarly. It's pretty gnarly. It's gory. It's not for the kids. It's
Yeah,
pretty adulty.
but it's good.
Yes, very good.
Okay, cool. I'm in. I like it. Let's give a quick reminder too. Waterways sending us to El Salvador and Peru this year. If you want to join us, send an email. El Salvador comes first. It is April 1st through the 7th. And then we're doing 1 week, 6 nights, Hotel Los Mongos takeover. Us and our listeners will have the entire spot booked out. And then the same thing in Peru at Chacama, August 27th through September 3rd. That's a 7 night stay. These are all inclusive packages, hotel, um, food, 3 meals a day, all that sort of stuff. Email me if you want to learn more, pricing, all that sort of stuff. Surfsplendor@gmail.com. I'll give you the info.
Good stuff. Come surf with Scott and David. It'll be fun. And David, we've said a lot. Until next time, adios and aloha.
All right. Thank you very much.